Yeah, you came early. I got it.
Okay, trying again. I'm sorry about that. Before there was somebody that needed to get into the gate, and I need to help him. Okay. Sadly, as I logged on to Facebook just now, I had a message that said, David, you became friends with Stuart Foster a year ago. Celebrate your friendiversary. Yeah. Sadly, we can't celebrate that. And I'd like to say the other way around, actually, that he was one of the people that used to always pop in on the shir. Almost, you can look back on all the shirim on Facebook, and you'll find again and again that he was one of the people that logged on. And they often had a hello rabbi from him or something to shout out. So I'd like to give the shir in his memory, as well as a chus. Hopefully it should be a merit for him that, he should have his funeral hopefully tomorrow. We've been waiting long enough. Mitzvah Hashem, Stuart's neshama should have an aliyah. We waited long enough. As I said, he was frequent to have joined our shir almost every single week, and I'd like to dedicate tonight's shir in his memory and for the speedy funeral of Stuart. Okay, tonight we are going to discuss the Parashas Mishpatim on page 416. Ve'ela Mishpatim asher tosim lifneim. I think we're just going to stick to the first pasuk over here. There's a few things to say, and then we're going to move on to the Megilla. That's the second part, the second half of the shir that I wanted to give tonight. Ve'ela Mishpatim asher tosim lifneim. These are the statutes, or the ordinances, whatever you want to call them, which you should place before them. So what is this ve'ela? And these, right? Usually the letter vav does what? It connects them, yeah? Vav is a connector, that's why it says and. Yeah, and these are the ordinances, or these are the statutes that you should put before them. So what's ve'ela? And these, what are we coming to include? So there's an interesting comment over here by the Seforno, and Seforno says, the Seforno says that in last week's Sedra, we go back to the 10 Commandments. What was the last of the 10 Commandments? What was the last of the 10 Commandments? Yeah, what's the last of the 10 Commandments? Pardon?
Shouldn't covet
Shouldn't covet somebody else's things. You shouldn't want to have somebody else's things. That's what the last of the 10 Commandments is. The question is, well, wait a minute. What's mine and what's not mine? Right? If I ask you what's yours and what's not yours, you say, well, I know what's mine and what's not mine. Okay, the things I go into a shop and I buy. Have the discussion about, somebody bashes into somebody else. Who owes whom money? Somebody's damaged somebody else. Who owes whom money? Somebody's property is done. Whatever it is, right? All those things will put into question exactly what it is that you own, what is yours, and what's not yours. Says the Torah, you want to know, you want to be able to tell whether or not these things are important to you. These things are yours, these things are not yours. What is it that I can want to have and that I cannot want to have? You need to have a good understanding of monetary law. Because without monetary law, you'll never really know anything that gets a little bit more complicated, what really is yours and what's not really yours. Okay? That's part one of this. Now, when we continue with this, the next bit, so this is ve'ela mishpatim, and it continues with the second half of the verse, which says, asher tosim lifneim, which you should place before them. And we're going to discuss within this a few commentaries what this asher tosim lifneim means. The first thing is what Rashi says, and Rashi says something extremely important. Rashi think that all you need to do is you need to teach them maybe once or twice or 3 times until they know it, right? So you say to kids, 2 plus 2 is 4. 2 plus 2 is 4. 2 plus 2 is 4. Then you say to him, 2 plus 2, 4, right? Does he understand why 2 plus 2 is 4?
Probably not.
Probably not, right? I think it takes years if you teach them the times tables for them to actually understand the timetables. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. Right? I know the 2 times table. Beautiful. Right? They don't realize, when they're young, when you're teaching these 2 times tables, A, what the importance of the 2 times table is. B, how do you work out this 2 times table? So I said, all right, what's past 20? Oh, I don't know. My teacher didn't teach me that. Yeah? 22. So what's the next one? I don't know. Yeah? You're back to the same thing because you've not really given the child the tools to be able to understand it. All you've given this child is what? Facts. And you parrot fashion have given this child the facts, and you said to this child, I want you to know and I want you to understand. And if I ever ask you the question, 2 + 2, the answer will always be 4. Good. That's important to teach kids facts. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that's unimportant. Many facts. Kids learn many facts, and many things they will learn they won't understand till much, much later in their lives. However, once you reach adulthood, and once you speak to adults, it's a very, very different discussion. So take an adult and teach an adult 2 + 2 is 4. Great. Now what's 4 + 4? I don't know. Then you got a real issue. See, with kids, okay, sometimes the kids will understand it, sometimes the kids won't understand it. If you have an adult that doesn't understand it, so you can understand the issue, and if he doesn't understand 2 + 2 is 4, and therefore 4 + 4 is 8, we have a serious issue. Yeah? But says Rashi, what about in religion? What about the way we look at this question when it comes to religion? Because the bottom line is, we've been given many, many mitzvahs. We got a list of them, a long list of them. If you were to compare our list with any other religion, they'd say, wow, you guys got a lot on. I thought we have a lot on. Don't steal, don't kill, and come to prayer on Sunday. Oh, that's nothing. You don't know what it means to be religious. You've never seen anything yet. Like what? Well, we pray 3 times a day. 3 times a day. Yeah. Shachris Mincha Ma'ariv. How long does that take? Well, all in all, it's probably about an hour and 15 minutes every day. 15 minutes for Shachris, 15 minutes for Ma'ariv, 15 minutes for Minchas, half an hour. Another 40, 45 minutes for Shachris, you're already at an hour and 15 minutes. And if it's a day with laning, what's laning? Laning means we're going to read from the Torah. Oh, then it's an hour and a half. You pray an hour and a half every single day? Uh-huh. Wow. What else do you do? Well, when we pray, we put on a prayer shawl. That looks nice. Yeah, it looks nice. Is that like a poncho? Somewhat. And what does it have? It's got black and white stripes, or red and white stripes, or blue and white stripes. Okay. And it's got these tassels on the bottom. Why'd you do that? I don't know. Everybody in the shul does it. So you look stupid if you don't have one. What else do you do? He says, we have what's called phylacteries. Phylacteries? What are phylacteries? Yeah, that's a translation of tefillin, which doesn't really get you much further anyway. I mean, anybody know what phylacteries is? We've made fun of this already once before. That sometimes the English words that we use don't really describe things. So what do you do? Okay, explain it to me. No problem. We take black boxes, okay, that have black straps attached to them. Right. And then we take those black boxes with the black straps and we tie them to our arm really tight, cut off the blood circulation for 45 minutes on our arm. Watch, I remember, especially about mitzvah boys, they get like blue hands, yeah? I think as you get older, you realize there's no mitzvah to actually choke off all the blood circulation in your arm. But when you're small, after bar mitzvah, we're all like, I can get this, yeah? Especially because it kept on moving. So you cut off the blood circulation on your arm, and then what do? And then we waver. You waver. Yeah, we shuckle. We waver back and forth. How long for? 40 minutes, just doing this. And then we just take it off again. Why'd you do that? Beats me. No idea. Not sure why I do it. It just, that's what Jews have done for centuries, so that's what we do. Really. Does that make any sense? Well, not really to me, but, Jews have done it for centuries, so we all do it. One person started and everybody else followed. They have a very famous story that I once read. I don't know if this is a true experiment that they did, but basically what happened is they had 5 monkeys in an enclosure, okay? And they threw in a sweet. And if a monkey went and took the sweet, the entire enclosure got doused in water. Now, I'm not for dousing monkeys in water, but that seems to what happened in this thing. And they doused the monkeys in water. The monkeys were very, very unhappy with that. And then what happened again is that, the next day, again, they threw in the sweet. One of the monkeys picked up the sweet, doused in water. And after a few days, the monkeys realized if you take the sweet, you get doused in water. And so they were like, no, we're not touching the sweet. So then what happened is the following, right? They swapped one of the monkeys. And again, now this new monkey picks up the sweet, and the other four monkeys beat up on him. Yeah? What are you doing getting everybody else wet? Okay, fine. Then they swapped another one of the original monkeys, and still the new monkey, now the old monkey, no, the second monkey that came in, the first one of the new ones, he knew that, like, you pick up a sweet, you get beaten up, so don't pick up the sweet. Throw in the sweet, but the new monkey's like, whoa, sweet, picks it up. All four of them, go in and like, give him what for, again. And they swapped around all 5 monkeys. And then they had 5 new monkeys in the enclosure. And basically what happened was with those 5 new monkeys in the enclosure is that every time one of those monkeys would pick up a sweet, the other 4 would beat the other guy up. But nobody had any idea why they did that. Because you had the first 5 monkeys, every time you picked up the sweet, they got doused in water. Then they swapped them around. It's just, why do you beat up on this 4th guy? Because that's what we do. Because when you pick up a sweet, you beat up on guy. Yeah, that was monkey see, monkey do. So we think that's funny, and we laugh at the monkeys. We're no different. Yeah. Why do you do this? I don't know. My parents did it. Well, why did they do it? Their parents did it. How far go back? Well, this goes back thousands of years. For thousands of years, we've been stupid and been wrapping, leather around our arms without any reason, rhyme or reason, or knowing why we did it or not. That sounds silly. Hey, Odie. That sounds stupid. Why do we do that? Says Rashi, if you want people to feel a connection to the Torah, and if you want to give them something tangible that not only can they hold on to, but something that they can actually feel a sense of connection to, what do you need to do? Explain to them the reason why they're doing something. Because if you only tell them what to do, but not why to do, what to do with why to do is a very, very dangerous thing. Right? So that, I'll give you another example. And I was speaking to somebody about this today. There's a young man that I know that's becoming a lot more religious. Okay? We don't want to give any identifying features, but a young man that I know is becoming a lot more religious. And this young man seems to be floating around amongst different people trying to figure out what it is to be religious. Yeah? So maybe I'll wear a hat. No, now I'm religious. Oh, maybe I'll wear a gartel. Now that makes me religious. Oh, if I wear a white shirt, I'll definitely be religious. Yeah? Can I ask you, honestly speaking, do you think a hat makes someone religious? A gartel makes someone religious?
Just a uniform, really.
It is a uniform.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying it's unimportant. There's a different discussion.
Oh, yeah.
The whole uniform discussion is a very, very different discussion, and it's not for tonight. But the point is, this kid has no clue what he's doing. None whatsoever. And so he keeps on changing, and he keeps on doing other things. And he's just antagonizing everybody or annoying everybody. And he's like, oh, Rabbi Eisenberg, yeah, I've decided from now on I'm going to the mikveh. And I'm like, no, that's not a good idea, Maybe decide to start learning Chumash. Yeah? Mikveh is like all the way at the end. Like when you do everything else and you still feel that you're missing something. Yeah? But let's start with davening. That means coming to davening on time. That means understanding the davening. That means being able to say the words. Let's start with Chumash and with Rashi. Yeah? I said, no, that's not exciting. And that doesn't get on anyone's back. Mikveh, especially as a young man, when it's really wrong. It's not his place. It's not where he's supposed to be. It just doesn't make any sense. People that make this decision suddenly to say, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to have a gartel and a white shirt and go to mikveh, and now I'm religious. And we all say, no. You've got a long way to go to understand what it means to be religious. A long way. But because you don't understand, because you're making it up as you go along, because all I do is monkey see, monkey do. So I walk into a religious shul and I look around and go, look, everyone's wearing a hat. I must wear a hat, otherwise I can't be religious. No. That's wrong.
This is all the low-hanging fruit as well, isn't it?
It is a low-hanging fruit. It's much easier to wear a hat than it is to become religious. Yeah, if all it took to become religious was to wear a hat, I think Esha Torah and Or Sameach would have been a lot more successful. What does it take to be religious? Spend 150 quid, you buy a hat, you'll be religious. That's it. What would my parents say? Well, if your parents don't like it, just take it off. You'll be non-religious for the points. Then when you put it back on, you'll be religious again. Yeah. Like you said, low-hanging fruit. It's easy. It's easy to put on a gartel. Now I look really religious because I got this thing across my stomach. Don't do the easy things if it makes no sense whatsoever. What about the meaning behind it? Why are you doing what you're doing? Why are you doing the mitzvahs? Don't just choose arbitrarily what you think is going to make you a great person, because that's not how we become great people. That's not how you become even a mediocre person. I think I should, from now on, some kind of rubbish. That's the question, right? Now, somebody said, well, the reason sometimes people who become more religious, don't conform is because the only way they were able to become more religious in the first place is because they didn't conform. Somebody who has secular friends, secular parents, a secular upbringing, etc., for them to let go of all of that and become religious takes a certain amount of non-conformism. For them to be able to look everyone in the face and say, I don't care what you say, I want to be religious. That's amazing that a person has that kind of resolve. The problem is that people see it as a very, very black and white thing. Well, look, I put on a hat, I do this, I do that, and then I'm there. And it's not. It's a very complicated thing. And some people get confused. And so sometimes you'll see people, from 1 minute to the next. He's wearing a shtreimel, he's wearing a hat. He's wearing a knitted yarmulke, he's wearing a gray suit, he's wearing a frock. Like, what are you, some kind of chameleon? Decide. And to do with the outside, who are you? Decide who you are, and then start behaving like that. But if you don't have an understanding of what it means to be a religious Jew, then you look at everything on the outside, and like you said, Ivor, low-hanging fruit. It's easy to do these things. It's a lot harder to learn. It's easy to put on a hat. It's a lot harder not to argue with your parents about things. Yeah?
It's working on your character.
It's working on your character. It's working on what really makes you a religious Jew over the feel-good factor, things that look good. It's all that. And all that is really, really hard. And all that is the kind of thing that everybody goes, I'm not really interested in doing that. Right. Of course not. Because as you said, it's hard. So that is also Ashatosim Mifneim, says Rashi. Teach people the reason, give them an understanding of what they're doing, because if you don't teach them the reason, don't give them an understanding what they're doing, they won't know what they're doing. And if they don't know what they're doing, then they'll always do rubbish. Or they won't understand it, and they won't be able to. They won't be able to do anything because they won't understand what they're doing. And therefore, what you need to do is you need to understand what it is that you're doing. Okay. We'll mention one last thing. And that is what the Sephorna speaks about over here, and the Arachaim, they both speak about this, and that's the question of what it means, Asher Tosnu, that you should place before them. There are certain halachas that are necessary for everyone to know. There are certain halachas that are not. So, for example, everybody needs to know the halachas of Shabbos. How could you live a religious life without knowing the halachas of Shabbos? You never know when you break the Shabbos, when you don't break the Shabbos, because you don't know the halachas of Shabbos. However, not everybody needs to know, for example, the laws of how to write a bill of divorce. Because guess what? If, God forbid, somebody needs to get divorced, what are they going to do? You go to the Beth Din, right? Nobody sits at home and goes, I think I'm going to write a divorce now. Divorce. This is a divorce from me to you. And you hand it to your wife and go, here you go, we're divorced now. Divorce has a procedure, it has a proceeding. Everything is very, very exact and directed how it works in the divorce. You can't just say from 1 second to the next, we are divorced, we're not divorced. Right? But does that mean that every layman needs to learn how to do or how to conduct a divorce? Absolutely not. And similarly, when it comes to monetary law, this is where the question is, do lay people actually need to know monetary law or not? Some will say, well, you know what? In general, the simple stuff I know, you walk into a shop, you buy something, you pay for it, right? That's simple monetary law. Yeah? You get into an argument, you have a partnership with someone, you get into an argument, you want to split up the partnership, and you don't know which percentages to split it up in, and he doesn't really want to split up, and you want to split up. Now you got an issue, right? But does everybody need to go through monetary law? Is so complicated. Does everybody need to go through extensive training in monetary law in case maybe one day they will go into partnership with someone else and then halfway through the partnership want to dissolve the partnership and need to know exactly what the terms and conditions will be? Probably not. In the same way, not everybody is a solicitor. Yeah? You don't need to be a solicitor to be able to live your life. But there's a certain amount of taxes you'll need to know about. You need to know. I need to know that I need to file a tax return. I don't need to file a tax return. I have self-employed income. I need to file that as a tax return. I need to make tax on that separately. There are certain amounts of things that you'll have to learn on your own, even in regular life. But then you say, well, I want to buy a property. What's the most tax efficient way to buy a property? Guess what? Call an accountant. Yeah? That's already a specialist question. Yeah? And therefore, it says, Asher Tosim, if name is not necessary, even though it says place it before them, it means not necessarily place it before everybody. Because not everybody needs to know exact halachas, unless it is something that's really, really negea, unless it's something that's really, really pertinent to you specifically, then you'd have to know it. So the Ohr HaChaim says, here this case of the Eved Ivri, that was very pertinent to people. Because if you're going to buy a slave and you think that this slave is going to remain with you for years, and then after 6 years he walks out on you and say, where are you going? Have you never read the terms of the contract? Oh. So there you have to teach people when it's something that's going to be, that might end up costing people, that might end up hurting people. Obviously, in such an instance, you have to be a lot more careful. Whereas when it's something that doesn't end up costing people like that, whereas it's something that is not as complicated, then, maybe you'd have to tell them. And that's Asher Tosim Flame. Okay, I want to move on now to the other thing. And here's an interesting thing. I want to start talking about the Megillah a little bit because we are closing in on Purim very, very quickly. So, Vayhi b'mei Achashverosh. It was in the days of Achashverosh. And it's interesting when we discuss Vayhi b'mei, the Gemara says anytime it says Vayhi b'mei, it is always a lashon, it is always a way of expressing some sort of pain. It is something negative that had happened here. So why are we saying over here, what was so bad in the times of Achashverosh? So I saw today the following comment brought by one of the commentaries on the Megillah called the Megillah Starim. And he says the following, he says, imagine or think back, this is not how he says it, I'm going to put it in my words and you can then extrapolate back to what he had said. Think back to the Second World War, okay? We had the majority of Jews concentrated in Europe, right? But thank God there was a British Jewish community, and thank God there was a community of Jews in Israel, and there were communities of Jews in Shanghai that had moved over that had been given visas to go all the way over to Japan and to China. The Mir Yeshiva ended up in Shanghai, first in Kobe, Japan, and then back to Shanghai. And we had Jews in other parts of the world that were not occupied by the Nazis. And so therefore, when the war broke out between the Nazis and the Allied powers, and the Nazis made it their business to exterminate the Jews. That was what they really stood for. Now, they wanted world domination also. But when it came to 1944 and they already realized that the war was gone, where was their entire effort put? Hungary and killing the Jews. They exterminated almost the entirety of Hungarian Jewry in 1 year. By 1944, they had perfected the art already. They knew it was them, well done. They really knew how to do this. And they had it down to science. And they just went on and on. And when people said, we need more troops to the front lines, how could you not put troops to the front lines? They would say, we need people in Auschwitz. We need people to help with the extermination of the Jews. So we're taking soldiers from the front lines and moving them actually where? To exterminate Jews, which is crazy. But even with all that, thank God, one of the things that saved Jewry was the fact that there were Jews in other parts of the world that were not Nazi-occupied territory that were able to survive there. The Jews in England didn't suffer.
It was touch and go, actually.
Pardon? Was it?
Because it
was touch and go. If they'd taken over England, with the Battle of Normandy and everything.
Halifax would have got in instead of Churchill in 1940. It might have been a different...
Really? So I don't know British history well enough. There you go. But it was touch and go then, But thank God he didn't, Halifax and Churchill got in, and Churchill said, no, we're not making any alliances with Hitler, and they fought Hitler instead.
A lot of the aristocrats were
anti-Semites. Yeah, sure. And somebody said to me recently, Jackie told me that they bought the plot from Achziki Adas.
Yeah, from Mosley.
And his chavra, who were Nazis. I think Henry Pfeffer bought it, so he bought it and nobody knew that it was buying. I'm not sure if they knew exactly that this was going to go to shul. I think Mosley's probably turning in his grave, thinking that there's 1,000 Jews davening in his old place every single day. That's fantastic. What a victory for the Jewish people. However, thank God that's what happened. And, we often say if the Nazis, they were this close to taking over England, if they're taking over England, who knows what would have happened to British Jewry? But chances are very similar. Pardon? Yeah, very similar to what happened in Europe. There's no, we like British Jews better. No, not at all. The British Jews would have had the same fate as the other Jews around Europe. Chas v'sholom. And if they had beaten America, American Jews would have been next. Now, what happens with Achashverosh? This is the thing, Ramosha. This is the thing that happens with Achashverosh that's really, really complicated. Achashverosh has world dominion, or almost world dominion, but more importantly, Achashverosh has the entirety of the Jewish people living in his kingdom. And that's Achenvei. That's already a real problem, because imagine if the entirety, God forbid, imagine if the entirety of the Jewish people had lived in Europe at the time of Hitler, and the entirety of the European community had wanted to collaborate with Hitler, God forbid, in exterminating all the Jews, there wouldn't be a Jew left, God forbid, in the world. The only reason we have some Jews left in the world is, A, because he didn't have long enough, and B, because there were other countries where he wasn't there. But in the time of Achashverosh, and this is what we say, one of the things that's so awful about the times of Achashverosh is that in Achashverosh's time, the entire Achashverosh HaMolech Mehodav Kush, he was the king, he was the ruler from Ethiopia all the way through to India. And that was the entirety of the Jewish people. That was everybody. And so therefore now everybody's in the same space, and there was plenty of anti-Semites, and they're just looking for a reason, and Achashverosh says, go. Brian, I'm not sure I understood the question, what you mean, how can they be better in gathering of the exiles? Could you rephrase that question? Brian Linz just asked a question. So that is why we say, Vayhi b'mei Achashverosh. That is why we talk about the terrible tragedy of the fact that Achashverosh was the ruler of the entire civilized world, and all the Jews were under his dominion at that point. And because he was the ruler of the entire civilized world and all the Jews were under his dominion, it was really, really dangerous. That's part one. Okay? Now we move on to something else. And that's very important also. And I'll start with the following story. It's an interesting story and a famous story in Israel. In Israel, there are, or around the world really, there are two main brands of cola that people drink. And they are Pepsi and Coca-Cola, right? Now, Pepsi has the hechsher of what's known as the Badatz Eida Charedis. The Eida Charedis is one of the best hechsherim in the entire Israel. That is a hechsher that basically everybody in Israel will eat. So that's what you want. You want, if you have a drink, a soft drink that you want everyone to be willing to buy, from the least religious to the most religious, what you want to do is you want to get the best hechsher and to give them a hechsher. So Pepsi has the Badatz, the Eida Charedis, and then Coca-Cola couldn't have the badats because Pepsi seems to have had a exclusivity agreement with them, so they have another hechsher by the name of Rav Landa, who's also one of the best hechsherim that there is out there in Israel. And at one point, I think in the 80s, there was a big Michael Jackson concert that was going to be staged in Israel, probably in Tel Aviv. Chances are in Tel Aviv, not in Yerushalayim. And expecting a massive concert and expecting a massive turnout, what did the Pepsi do? Because Pepsi very much was, I think Michael Jackson worked a lot with Pepsi, if I remember correctly. In America, I think definitely they had a commercial with Michael Jackson and Pepsi. So what did they do? They were advertising this Michael Jackson concert on their Pepsi Cola bottles, right? So you'd have a bottle with Michael Jackson on it. So the Badats went, the Eidach HaRedis went, and they removed their hechsher from the Coke. They said, really? That's what you put on your bottles? Forget it. I am taking away my kashrus certificate for your product. As you can imagine,
same ingredients,
but they just, so we know that. As you can imagine, that caused a tremendous ruckus, a tremendous uproar in Israel. How could you? How dare you? And the problem in Israel is, when it comes to kashrus, is that kashrus is not a strictly rabbinic thing. If it was strictly rabbinic, it would make things a lot easier. However, Pepsi felt they were being harshly treated by the Badats. And what do you do if you feel you're being harshly treated by the Badats? You take them to court. And when now the court is going to force the Badats to give back the hechsher, to reclaim or re-put on the hechsher on your Pepsi bottles. Yeah? And they went to court over it. And Badats won. Interestingly enough. And the Badat said the following. Maybe they made two different types of bottles, and afterwards they made those for Tel Aviv and those for Yerushalayim. But the Badat said the following. He said, look, when we put a hechsher on a product, what are we saying with that hechsher? That's a really, really important point.
It's kosher.
So that's what they said.
They approve of everything to do with the product.
They approve of this being brought
consumed
into your house and to be consumed. That's what they were saying.
The whole thing.
And therefore they were saying, it is not become not kosher. The Badats wasn't arguing, what, you put on Michael Jackson's going to make the Coca-Cola not kosher? Absolutely not. The Coca-Cola remains as kosher as it always was. Or the Pepsi-Cola in this instance. However, but that says, if people walk into a shop and they see my label on it, that means I am giving you the okay, and I think that this is something that is correct or okay to have in your house. And I don't believe that this is the case. We, as the Eidach HaRedis, again, very, very ultra-religious, we don't believe that in a Yerushalmi home, or in a home of an ultra-Orthodox Jew, there should be a bottle with Michael Jackson on it. Now, whether you agree or you don't agree, that's what the Badat said. And they won. And I think there's a very important point to be made on this, because this is coming back to what we see in the Megillah, in the beginning of the Megillah. Look at the beginning of the Megillah, the story of the beginning of the Megillah. Ahasuerus makes a party. And he invites everyone, he even invites the Jews. And what did he do in order to entice the Jewish people to come? What was the food like? It was very kosher. We didn't only have Rabbanut kosher, and we didn't only have Rabbanut Mehadrin kosher. We had like the conglomerate of the MH and Rav Landau and everyone all together, the most kosher product that you will ever find. Yeah? That is what he put out.
Behavior wasn't right.
There we go. Comes Ahasuerus, and he says, all the Jews of the town are invited. And Mordechai stands up and he says, the Jewish people of this town are not to go to this party. And Ahasuerus says, the food is kosher, and the entertainment is amazing, and you've never tasted wine like this before, and you're going to have a great time. Don't miss out on the party of a lifetime. And Mordechai says, a Jewish person does not belong at this party. And the Jewish people went to the party. because they said to Mordechai, no, 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 no. Is it kosher? Yes. Is it glad kosher? Yes. Is the wine with the best hechsher? Yes. So where's the problem? What do you mean where's the problem? It's not really a place for a Jewish boy or for a Jewish girl to be. Is it kosher? Yes. Is it glad kosher? Yes. Is the wine kosher? Yes. Then what exactly is your problem? Okay? And this is in general an important point. That just because something is kosher, or just because something might even be glad kosher, does not mean it's a good idea to find yourself there. Because if you look at the Midrashim and you look what went on over there, so Pharaoh brought them, the Achashverosh brings them in, but there were prostitutes around, and women dancers, and people were making lewd comments, and there was a lot of discussion going on that was not befitting of religious people or anybody, really. But once you're there, and once you're eating, and once you're drinking, and once you're having a great time, what ends up happening? You get in on the action. That is how it happens. So Achashverosh was no fool. People say Achashverosh was very clever. He knew, if I can just create the right atmosphere, if I can entice them in with the right things, but not by saying they're not kosher, the most kosher of kosher things, I guarantee they will falter. They have to, because that is how it happens. And so it's important always to know and always to realize and always to recognize, because something has a hechsher does not make it kosher. Just because a place has a kashrus certificate doesn't mean necessarily it's a place where you as a Jewish person should be found or find yourself. If what's going on in the background is wrong, if there's going to be lewd behavior, if there's going to be rude behavior, right? So let me give you an example and we'll finish with this. Let's say somebody was invited, this, what was it called? This President's Club? Yeah? Let's say somebody was invited to the President's Club. And he said to his wife, I'm going tonight to the President's Club. Well, what happens there? Maybe I'll tell you when I come home. Is the food kosher? Yeah, the food is kosher. Oh, all right, then you can go. Would you have gone to the President's Club meeting if the food was kosher? Knowing what was going on over there? The terrible things that they were doing, the demeaning things and ways that they treated women? Absolutely not. But the food is kosher and the wine is kosher and they have kosher waiters. So, not only that, there are charities that took the money. Great Ormond Street Hospital took the money and did what with it? They gave it back. They said, we don't want your money. What, you raised money for us? That's the tzedakah that we're going to take. We should take money. There was this whole, recently there was this whole argument in London about somebody who gave money who had been, a child molester or something. And he had given a Sefer Torah to shul. And people were very, very upset because how could you accept the money from somebody who molested children to buy a Sefer Torah to put in a... What do you mean? What do you mean? It's a Sefer Torah. Yeah. What do you mean? It's kosher food. Yeah, it's the kosher food at the President's Club means it's treif. Even though the food is very, very kosher. You don't belong there. So you say, well, I wouldn't touch any women. That's not my kind of thing to do. You don't belong there whether you would touch the women or wouldn't touch the women. That's irrelevant. It's not a place where anybody who has any self-worth or self-respect would ever find themselves. In a place where the people around you groping women. That's just not the place to be. And so you're saying, so what? So food's kosher? Who cares? Who really cares? And that's the important thing to realize that we learned over here from Achashverosh. The food and the kashrus on the food does not give a kashrus to the event. It just means that the food of the event will be kosher. You still have to then ask the question, is this a place where I should be? And if the answer is no, then don't go. Okay? Thank you very much for joining us. Again, next week, Tuesday night, Parasha as well as Megilla.